Okay, and first of all, thanks again to Chuck Griffin for letting us use this beautiful courtyard. Fabio, you just gave us a big picture overview of this particular jail. Now let's talk about the process, and of course, it's all about the preparation. So tell us about the tools you use to really rake those joints clean and get the job started.
Okay, so I'm gonna do, generally speaking, these are all the tools that I use for removal. Each job is different, so some of these tools may or may not be used on this job. But in general, you have your chisels, your chipping chisels. These are only effective to a certain depth because they get wider and they hit either side of the stones. So this might not be a good tool for here, but it works well with other thicker joints. Then you have your tooth chisels. They're extremely effective at grinding down hard mortar, you know, especially a Portland cement. That's on some work. Then you have my favorite, which are the Cape chisels. The Cape chisels are different in that they are in the same thickness, so they don't get jammed into the stone like you know, like a regular chisel would. So these are also carbide, so they last quite a long time, and you can get them in different thicknesses. So they can, you know, you can choose which size for which joint.
Awesome.
There's also you can also use them on a pneumatic tool. You can work longer without getting fatigued. And this will fit. This is another style. It's almost like a butter knife or a sleigh. You would put them into your hammer, and this would hammer away, and it would just chisel your mortar away without putting pressure on the stones or the bricks.
Now with these older buildings, the joints are a lot thinner. What do you use if you have a very fine joint?
Right, like for example, this kind of chisel right here work pretty well. They're extremely thin, and they will fit right into that joint, and they can go rather deep.
Cool.
If the joint, you really don't need to go any deeper than that. That's about an inch and a half or 2 inches, so that's sufficient to put a good amount of mortar in any kind of work. And obviously your hammers, you want to try to use small hammers so you get less impact on the wall, especially bricks. If you use a big hammer, there's you know, you're shaking everything up, and you don't want to use too much of that pounding on any structure and actually making things worse than they actually are. So small hammers, or you know, a bigger hammer like that, but just step lightly and take your time and do it right. Also, I use quite a bit of power tools. Like a grinder like that. This attaches to a vacuum. So it removes 90% of the dust and makes it a lot easier to work with.
Would you recommend this to a homeowner first time?
No, this is a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
And it needs quite a bit of skill to use. You could damage a brick job quite easily with this if you don't know how to use this. It does speed up work quite dramatically, but in the wrong hands, this would just damage permanently your building.
Have you ever used a fine tool or an oscillating tool?
I haven't, but I've known people that use that effectively. The blades are quite expensive, and they wear out rather quickly, so it becomes expensive. It could become quite expensive.
So from your perspective, not worth it because you have the skill to use this.
Right, and a blade like this will cost you $70, and it will last quite, you know, 100 times longer than an oscillating tool.
Understood.
Obviously, when you use power tools like this, you wanna make sure that you're protected. So ear protection, eye protection, and most of all, dust protection. You're gonna make a lot of silica dust, and you don't want to get that silicosis, which now we know quite a lot about, and it does give you silicosis. So you're gonna make sure that you
I'll wear a mask.
Protect yourself.
All right, so this is what it takes to prepare it and get the mortar out of it. What about cleaning up a joint after
and obviously after you've worked with the power tools, you can also use a jointer to you know, scratch out all of the debris.
Great.
You can use a shop vac on the lower side and blow the joints clean.
Okay.
You can use a hose and hose everything down.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend a hose on this job because the joints are so deep,
Okay.
and the granite, it's poreless. So
Okay.
whatever water pulls inside that mortar joint,
Okay.
it's gonna stay there for a very long time. So you don't
This is
want
why
to.
we bring the pros in, right, Chuck? I had a different opinion, and I
Right.
wasn't thinking about that.
So, or an air compressor works quite well.
Okay.
You know, if you're actually, have one on the job because you're using your power tools, an air compressor
Okay, cool.
would blow those joints right out.
But the important
get 'em
thing is to
ready.
make sure the joints are completely clean.
Correct.
Okay.
So you want to clean them as much as possible. So water is the best because it would wash them away. But unfortunately, in this instance here, the stones aren't flat. They have little puddles, and that water would just linger there for days. So you wouldn't be able to point for quite a long
Okay,
time.
so it needs to be dry before you
Absolutely.
point. Okay, so
Moist,
yeah,
but not wet.
moist
So-
but not wet.
Right. So the
From the
granite,
pros.
it's poreless. So a quick spritz, perhaps with a
Quick
with a
spritz.
sprayer,
Okay,
it's quite enough to give it the moisture that it needs.
great. Okay, so we've now have the joints cleaned out nice and thoroughly. They're moist, but they're not wet. You've given them a quick spritz. And I think at this point they're ready to receive some
To
lime putty.
receive mortar. Yeah.
So let's check it out.